The first time Nikos saw her, he thought she was a figment of his imagination. It was an ordinary night under the stars, or what had once been ordinary before Earth's skies were forever changed by the arrival of the HFY. The world had come to accept the alien presence over the last few years, though it hadn't been easy. First, it had been about survival. Then, the struggle turned to understanding, and somewhere along the way, a fragile alliance began to form. Nikos, a soldier in the global defense forces, had seen his fair share of strange things, but nothing quite like this. He had been assigned to monitor an uncharted sector near the mountains of what used to be Wyoming, a place once known for its rugged beauty, but now eerily quiet, except for the occasional HFY reconnaissance ship hovering in the distance. His job? Observe and report. He didn't expect to meet any HFY face-to-face. That was until he found her. The alien girl, no, woman, was standing in the middle of the small clearing. Her skin was a translucent shade of green, not unlike jade, and her eyes gleamed with a faint luminescent gold. Unlike the other HFY he had seen, who often maintained a stoic, distant demeanor, this one had an aura of quiet curiosity. Nikos had only a moment to assess the situation before his hand instinctively went to the blaster at his side, but then he paused. Something about her felt different. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice rough, his heart pounding in his chest. The alien's head tilted, the motion fluid and graceful. She made no immediate move to respond verbally, but her gaze seemed to deepen as though she were measuring him in a way that was both unsettling and strangely intimate. It was as though she could see beyond his uniform, beyond the surface, and into something deeper, something personal. "You are a human," she finally spoke, her voice soft and melodic. The accent was unlike anything Nikos had ever heard, a gentle lilt that seemed to dance in the air around them. "You are here." Nikos frowned. "Here? Where else would I be?" The HFY woman glanced around, her expression shifting from curiosity to something akin to contemplation. "Not here," she murmured. Before Nikos could ask her what she meant, there was a soft whirring sound. A light blinked on his communicator, signaling that his backup was arriving. But when he looked up, the woman was already gone, blending into the night with an ease that almost felt unnatural. The next day, Nikos couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. He had seen other HFY before, but none like her. There was something compelling about her presence, something that stirred a part of him he had long buried. But he had a job to do, and so he pushed thoughts of her away, focusing on his mission to explore a new HFY structure deep within the mountains. That evening, he found himself back at the site, a half-buried ruin that had been left behind by the HFY explorers. As he worked his way through the ruins, uncovering ancient markings and symbols, a sudden rustle in the underbrush caught his attention. He spun around, hand going instinctively to his weapon, but stopped short when he saw her again. The alien woman was standing at the edge of the clearing, her gaze steady upon him. She didn't make a move toward him, but her presence was undeniable. This time, there was no fear in her eyes, only something that Nikos couldn't quite place, an emotion he had never seen in an alien before. "I didn't think I would see you again," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The alien tilted, her head, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "And yet you have. Do you believe it is coincidence?" Nikos studied her, intrigued by her sudden cryptic words. He had seen many things in his time as a soldier, but nothing that had made him feel like this, as though every step he took forward, he was only inching closer to something monumental. "I don't believe in coincidence," he said, his voice low. The alien nodded as though she understood, though there was something oddly knowing in her expression. "Then you will understand this." She took a step closer, and the air around them seemed to crackle with energy. Nikos wasn't sure if it was her presence or the strange hum of the ruins around them, but for the first time, he felt both an overwhelming urge to run and an equally powerful urge to stay. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Before he could respond, a sudden crash echoed from the direction of his camp. His communicator buzzed urgently in his ear, but he was too distracted by her words to hear it clearly. Without thinking, Nikos reached out to her, his hand instinctively moving to her arm. "You're not safe here," he said, his concern rising. "Come with me." But instead of pulling away or resisting, the alien girl looked down at his hand. Her eyes, luminous and vast, met his again, and for a long, suspended moment, they simply stood there. "I cannot," she whispered. Nikos was about to insist when a low, menacing growl reverberated through the air, followed by the unmistakable roar of a Eva Ari creature, a hunter, a predator. The beast's keen senses had likely picked up their presence, and it wasn't far from them. Nikos cursed under his breath. "We need to go," he said, his voice sharp. This time the alien didn't hesitate. Her hand touched his chest with unexpected force, and before he could blink, they were moving, her speed far exceeding anything humanly possible. She pulled him forward, navigating the dark ruins with a grace that Nikos couldn't quite match. The air around them shifted again, and he realized with dawning comprehension that this alien was not just unlike anything he'd ever known. She was powerful. She was otherworldly. As they neared the edge of the clearing, the growling of the creature became louder, closer. The Eva Ari girl stopped suddenly, turning toward Nikos with an intensity that made his heart race. "Do you trust me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Nikos's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know her. He didn't understand her. But somehow deep inside, he felt an undeniable pull. "Yes," he breathed out, before he could stop himself. The alien girl's eyes softened. Then without warning, she kissed him. Lightly at first, but with an intensity that took his breath away. When she pulled back, she gave him a half smile, the kind of smile that felt as though it had traveled across galaxies, just to reach him. "Stay close," she said, and with that, she led them both into the night. This marks the beginning of Nikos and the alien girl's journey, fraught with danger, romance, and revelations. As the story unfolds, their bond will grow stronger, tested by enemies, the mysteries of the alien world, and the undeniable connection between them. The night was thick with tension. Nikos's heart raced as they ran through the dense foliage, the sounds of the Eva Ari hunter closing in from behind. He could hear its massive claws scraping against the ground, followed by the menacing growls that vibrated through the air. It was only a matter of time before the creature caught up with them, and yet, despite the imminent danger, Nikos couldn't focus on anything except the girl beside him. Her presence was magnetic, her speed almost supernatural. She moved through the wilderness like a shadow, fluid and unyielding. His legs burned from the exertion, but he pushed himself harder, driven by the need to keep up with her, to stay close. Every time he looked at her, his mind struggled to make sense of her alien features, her mysterious aura, and the strange connection he felt toward her. But none of that mattered right now. There was only one thing that mattered: survival. The alien girl, whose name he still didn't know, didn't break stride as she darted between trees, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a practiced precision. She was leading him toward a cliffside, where the terrain became even more rugged, more unforgiving. He was about to speak when she raised a hand, signaling him to stop. He obeyed instinctively, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he crouched behind a boulder. She knelt beside him, her face illuminated by the faint glow of her skin. It was then that he noticed something he hadn't before. Her eyes weren't just gold, but pulsed with a subtle rhythmic light. It was mesmerizing. "We need to get higher," she said, her voice steady and calm, as though the predator stalking them wasn't mere moments away from pouncing. "Follow me." Nikos didn't question her. He had no reason to. Somehow he felt that she knew exactly what she was doing. They scrambled up the rocks, using every ounce of strength they had left to ascend the cliffside. The growling of the Eva Ari hunter echoed closer, a terrifying reminder that time was running out. They reached a narrow ledge that overlooked a vast, darkened valley. The girl didn't stop, but instead took a few steps forward, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Nikos followed, keeping his eyes on her every movement. "Why didn't you leave me behind?" he asked between breaths, his curiosity outweighing the fear that gripped him. He couldn't fathom why she had saved him, why she had chosen to protect him. She didn't immediately answer, instead reaching out and placing a hand on the rock in front of her, her fingers brushing the surface. For a moment, it seemed as though she was communing with something beyond the physical world, tapping into forces that Nikos couldn't even begin to understand. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable sincerity. "Because you are more than what you seem," she said simply. Her words left him speechless, and before he could respond, the sound of the hunter grew louder. It was almost upon them. The alien girl moved again, faster now, her body a blur as she positioned herself in front of Nikos. She raised her arms in a fluid motion, her fingers glowing faintly. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, as if by some unseen force, the ground beneath them trembled, and the Ivari hunter's growl turned into a howl of frustration. The creature had stopped, frozen in place. Nikos could only watch, wide-eyed, as the girl's eyes glowed brighter, and she focused all her energy into whatever was holding the creature at bay. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice strained as though she was exerting herself. "It will break free soon." Without another word, she grabbed Nikos's hand and pulled him up, leading him across the ledge to a small concealed alcove in the rock face. She pushed him inside and followed, crouching beside him, her breath shaky but controlled. Nikos watched, his mind racing. There was so much he didn't understand. Why had she chosen him? What did she mean when she said he was more than he seemed? But there was no time to dwell on these questions. The hunter was still out there, and for all his confusion, he knew one thing for certain. This alien girl had saved his life, and he owed her more than he could ever repay. As they huddled in the alcove, the sounds of the hunter's frustrated roars reverberated through the valley. The girl closed her eyes, breathing deeply as if drawing strength from something deep within herself. Nikos remained still, trying to calm his racing heart, but it wasn't easy. His senses were on high alert, and the adrenaline coursing through his veins made it hard to think clearly. But then, something unexpected happened. The girl turned to him, her golden eyes locking with his in a way that made his pulse quicken. She looked at him with such intensity, such depth, that it felt as though she was seeing through him, reaching into the very core of who he was. "Are you afraid?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a weight of something ancient and knowing. Nikos hesitated. It wasn't fear that gripped him now. It was something else. Something that tugged at him every time she spoke, every time their gazes met. The connection between them was undeniable, and it made everything else feel distant, unimportant. "No," he said, the words slipping out before he had time to think. "I'm not afraid." The girl's lips curled into a faint smile, and for a moment the tension between them eased, but only for a moment. The creature outside let out another howl, more desperate now, and Nikos felt the ground tremble beneath them once again. "We need to move," she said, her voice a little sharper now. She stood, her movements fluid and decisive. "Stay close. Do exactly as I do." Nikos nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for his blaster, but the girl stopped him, her eyes locking onto his once more. "No weapons," she said firmly. "Trust me." There was no time to argue. He knew it, and somehow, he knew that if he didn't trust her now, they would both be lost. Together, they slipped out of the alcove, and the girl led him down a narrow, winding path that disappeared into the shadows. The hunter's growls were growing fainter, but they weren't safe yet. The girl's speed was unmatched, her form a blur as she darted between the jagged rocks and dense undergrowth. Nikos followed closely behind, keeping pace as best he could. Minutes passed, long, tense minutes, but the sounds of the hunter's pursuit eventually faded into silence. When they finally came to a stop, Nikos found himself standing at the edge of another cliff, looking out over a vast expanse of trees and mountains. The night was deep, the stars barely visible through the haze of smoke that had begun to settle in the air. The girl stood beside him, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. "We're safe now," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Nikos looked at her, his heart still pounding in his chest. He could still feel the weight of her presence, the connection that had formed between them in such a short time. "Why did you save me?" he asked, the question finally spilling from his lips. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, there was something almost vulnerable in her expression. "Because," she said, her voice low, "I believe you have something inside you that even I don't fully understand yet. But I think it's something worth protecting." Nikos could feel the warmth of her gaze, the gravity of her words, and it was then that he realized just how much this encounter had changed him. Whatever was happening between them, whatever this pull was, it wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was something deep, something that might change everything he thought he knew about the world, about humanity, and about the universe itself. And in that moment, he knew he would follow her anywhere. The night stretched on, a silent blanket over the valley as Nikos and the alien girl stood side by side at the edge of the cliff. The wind whispered through the trees below, and the distant rumble of thunder echoed from the horizon, a storm brewing in the distance. Despite the danger that had stalked them, the rush of adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving a quiet unease in its wake. Nikos couldn't stop thinking about the girl beside him. She had saved his life. She had chosen him, pulled him from the jaws of death with an ease that he couldn't explain. And now they were here, standing in the darkness with only the faint glow of her skin to guide him. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice still rough from the run, but softer now, as if the urgency of the moment had passed, leaving room for questions. She didn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon, as if contemplating something far beyond the mountains and forests that lay before them. Her eyes shimmered in the dim light, gold swirling in the depths like a starry sky, and for a moment Nikos wondered if she was searching for something that he couldn't see, something he couldn't understand. "I don't know," she finally said, her voice tinged with an odd mix of frustration and sadness. "But it's not the destination that matters. It's everything that happens in between." Nikos frowned. She spoke like she had seen the end of the world and the beginning of another. Like she had lived countless lifetimes, and yet she was still trying to figure out the meaning of it all. He couldn't even begin to comprehend her words, but one thing was clear. She was no ordinary alien. There was something ancient in her, something beyond the scope of his human understanding. "You're not like the others," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "You're different." Her eyes shifted to him then, her gaze sharp and intense, as if she was studying him in a way that made him feel both exposed and seen all at once. She tilted her head slightly, and for a moment Nikos swore he saw a flicker of something in her expression, something fleeting, like the shadow of a memory just out of reach. "I am different," she replied, her voice distant. "And you, too, are different." Nikos opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but the words caught in his throat. He didn't know how to ask. He didn't know what to say. Everything about her, everything about this situation, felt wrong in the most beautiful way. She took a step closer, her eyes still fixed on his, and the air around them seemed to shift, the temperature dropping just slightly. It wasn't cold, but there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere, as if someone was coming closer, unseen but deeply felt. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The connection. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's something that's been waiting for us, something older than us." Nikos swallowed hard. He didn't know what she meant, but he couldn't deny that there was a pull between them, a magnetic force that neither of them could ignore. The moment their eyes met, it was like everything else faded away. The hunter, the ruins, the war, even the stars seemed to lose their importance. There was only this, her, and the strange, undeniable force drawing them together. I don't understand, he said, his voice strained with frustration and longing. What is this? What is happening between us? She reached out then, her hand brushing lightly against his chest. It was a gentle touch, but it sent a jolt of electricity through his body, leaving him breathless. For a moment he thought he might collapse from the sheer intensity of it all. Your kind calls it love, she said, her voice soft, almost reverent. But it's more than that. It's a bond that transcends time and space and even life itself. It's something ancient, something that has been waiting to awaken. Nico's heart pounded in his chest, his pulse quickening as he tried to process her words. Love. The word sounded so simple, so human. Yet when she said it, it felt like something much larger, something that stretched beyond the limits of his understanding. Before he could speak, the girl stepped back, her expression suddenly serious. The air around them had shifted again, this time with a sense of urgency. She was no longer looking at him with the same softness. Now she was focused, determined, as though a new understanding had dawned in her mind. We need to move, she said, her voice firm. They'll be here soon. Who? Nikos asked. But even as the words left his mouth, he had a sinking feeling that he knew the answer. The others, she replied, her eyes darkening. The ones who have been watching us. The ones who are hunting us. Nikos's stomach churned. He hadn't even considered that they weren't the only ones out here. He had been so focused on surviving the hunt that he hadn't thought about what might be tracking them, what might be watching them. The thought made his blood run cold. We have to get to higher ground, she said, already turning and moving swiftly up the rocky path. Nikos didn't hesitate this time. He followed her, his feet moving instinctively, his mind racing to keep up. As they ascended the mountain, Nikos's thoughts were a blur. There was so much he still didn't understand. The Eva Ari, the creatures, the war, and now this bond between him and this alien girl. The more he thought about it, the more surreal it seemed. A human and an alien, bound together by something ancient, something powerful. They reached the top of the cliff just as the first flashes of lightning lit up the sky. A storm was definitely coming, but it wasn't the storm that had Nikos on edge. It was the sense of something closing in, something that was aware of them and not in a way that felt accidental. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as they reached a narrow ridge that overlooked a deep ravine. The girl stopped, abruptly turning to face him. Stay behind me, she instructed, her voice low and steady. Nikos did as she said, instinctively trusting her despite everything. He didn't know what kind of enemies they were facing, but he had learned to trust her. He had no other choice. Moment passed. The storm rumbled overhead, the sound of thunder a reminder that the world was on the brink of chaos. And then, through the shadows, Nikos saw movement. A figure appeared at the edge of the ravine, tall and imposing, its silhouette casting a long shadow against the jagged rocks. The alien girl's eyes flashed with an intensity Nikos had never seen before. She raised her hand, fingers glowing, once again with that strange pulsing light. We have to end this, she said, her voice cold, determined. Now. Nikos felt his heart skip a beat. Whatever was happening between them, whatever this bond was, it wasn't just a connection. It was a weapon, a force that was about to be unleashed. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, revealing more of itself. Nikos's breath caught in his throat. The creature wasn't Eva Ari. It wasn't anything he had ever seen before, and it was staring right at them. The creature before them was like nothing Nikos had ever seen. Its body shimmered in the storm's dim light, the shadows casting long, angular forms across its skin, which seemed to ripple like liquid. It was tall, too tall, and its face, grotesque blend of alien features, stared at them with a hauntingly vacant expression. Its eyes, dark as night, locked onto the girl, and for a moment, Nikos felt a chill crawl up his spine. This was no ordinary enemy. This was something ancient, something far beyond any of the beings they had encountered so far. It was a presence that didn't just threaten with physical might. It carried an aura of power, of inevitability. The girl didn't flinch. Her golden eyes remained locked on the creature as she stepped in front of Nikos, her body a wall of determination. "Leave, now," she said, her voice calm but firm, carrying a weight that seemed to bend the very air around them. The creature didn't move at first, its gaze flicking from the girl to Nikos, calculating. There was a moment of stillness, an almost unbearable silence in the storm before it stepped closer, its form now fully revealed in the lightning's flash. Its jagged features were accentuated by the storm's chaos, but there was something almost mournful about its presence. The girl raised her hand again, her fingers glowing more intensely now. A soft hum filled the air, like a vibrating string that resonated deep in Nikos's chest. The air around them seemed to shimmer, warping as if reality itself was bending to her will. The creature snarled, but it did not advance. Instead, it paused, and for a fleeting moment Nikos saw something in its eyes, a flicker of recognition. "Why don't you just leave us alone?" Nikos asked, his voice shaky but louder than he intended. The creature seemed to pause, considering his words, but the girl didn't give it time to respond. Her eyes flashed brightly, and she took a step forward, her hand raised as if to strike. The energy around her surged, crackling like electricity, and for the first time, Nikos saw the true depth of her power. Power that was beyond anything he could have imagined. "Because this is not about you," she said softly. "This is about the past and what we have yet to face." With a sudden movement, she thrust her hand toward the creature, a pulse of light bursting from her palm. The creature recoiled as though struck by an invisible force, its screech echoing into the night. The very air trembled with the energy she released, and the ground beneath them cracked, sending small rocks tumbling into the ravine below. But even as the creature staggered back, the girl's expression softened, her hand lowering. She seemed to be restraining herself, her power barely contained. Nikos, still trying to process what was happening, reached out for her arm. "What's going on? Who is it? Why are they here?" Her eyes met his, and for the first time since they'd met, she seemed human, vulnerable. There was a flicker of something deep within her, a hesitation that wasn't there before. "They are the ones who have been waiting," she said quietly, her voice heavy with something unspoken. "The ones who have seen the future and want to prevent it. They're here to stop what is inevitable." Nikos's heart skipped a beat. "The future? What do you mean? What's going to happen?" The girl turned to face the creature again, her eyes narrowing. The storm had intensified, the winds picking up, but she remained calm. "I'm the key," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "I've always been the key, but there's more to this than just us." She stepped forward, the storm swirling around her as if it obeyed her. Her power radiated outward, and Nikos felt his heart race, knowing that the moment they had all been avoiding was finally upon them. "You have a choice," she said, her voice resolute, but with a strange warmth. "We both have a choice. The power we hold, the bond between us, it's not just something to fight against. It's something that can change everything." The creature let out a low growl, stepping forward again. But this time, it didn't seem to want to attack. It seemed to wait, to watch, as if it understood the weight of the decision before them. Nikos felt a pull toward the girl, his heart beating in time with the rhythm of the storm. He wasn't sure what this all meant, but he understood one thing. Whatever was happening, whatever connection they shared, it was the key to something bigger than either of them. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, and as their hands met, the world seemed to still. The energy between them pulsed, a powerful current that surged through Nikos's veins. He could feel her hopes, her fears, her purpose, and in that moment he understood. The girl's eyes softened, and she gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was a smile filled with acceptance, with understanding. "Together," she whispered. The creature took a step back, its form flickering in and out of focus. It looked at them one final time, its expression unreadable, before it disappeared into the storm, as if it had never been there at all. The tension that had filled the air vanished in an instant. The storm which had raged around them seemed to ease, the winds dying down, the rain lessening. The sky cleared just slightly, revealing a scattering of stars in the vastness above. Nikos stood frozen, his hand still resting on hers. The world felt different now, like something had shifted in a way that he couldn't quite explain. The bond between them had changed everything. He could feel it deep within him. The girl, this alien who had become so much more than that, was no longer a stranger to him. She was part of him now, and in return he was part of something far greater than either of them had imagined. They stood there together, on the edge of the cliff, looking out over the world that had been torn apart by war, by fear, by the unknown. But in that moment, the world didn't feel so dark. It didn't feel so hopeless, because together they had the power to change it. And somehow, despite everything, Nikos knew that love wasn't just the answer. It was the beginning of everything. He turned to her, his gaze steady, his heart full. "Where do we go from here?" She smiled, her golden eyes shining with an unspoken promise. "Wherever we choose." And for the first time, Nikos felt that whatever lay ahead, whatever battles they might face, whatever challenges awaited them, they would face it together. The future was theirs to write. And with the alien girl by his side, Nikos knew that anything was possible.